Hello, everybody, and welcome to the roadmap update. So we are here with Vlad, as
Hello.
always, and it's been almost a year since we're doing. We have this tradition now of doing it during our last esports event of the year, and we are here to talk about 2022, 2023. And I think we might
even
go beyond. Yeah, that's going to be interesting for sure. So, Vlad, without further ado, I think maybe we should start with talking about what happened this year and what we achieved.
Sure. Let's do this. It feels like yesterday we were delivering the roadmap update for 2022 before the year started, and now we're talking about all the things that happened during this year. So let's just quickly recap what was this year in Gwent, what we will remember about it. And of course we can start with card drops. So in total we specifically calculated the exact number of cards that we released this year. We released 86 cards throughout the years, separated between 4 card drops. From what I remember, that's actually more than we intended to release initially, but it happens sometime, like when the team is over enthusiastic about what they're doing. Sometimes you can go above the plan, and it happens a lot in Gwent. 86 new cards definitely have a big impact on the game. Then another important part of our last year update, from what I remember, was the news about Journey. The fact that journeys are eternal from 2022, and by that moment, all 8 journeys were re-released, never to end.
Yeah, last one's added in November. So all of them, if you missed any of them, or if you want to check them out because you still haven't, but most of you probably already did, you can, because like you said, they are now eternal, or didn't we call them something different, I think, instead of
Infinite?
Infinite, yes. Infinite Journeys, exactly. That's the name. But we also did monthly patches, and we also worked on cards, on existing archetypes, so there's also stuff there.
It's worth to mention about the reworks. Reworks was a big part of my roadmap update last year as well, so it feels appropriate to touch on this subject. It's interesting that in terms of number of reworks, like a full reworks of the cards' visibility and everything, it's almost equal to the number of the new cards released, actually even a bit higher. So we're talking about 88 complete reworks. So, really comparable number in terms of the potential impact on the meta, in terms of what it actually brings to the game in terms of changes. And I remember how I was talking that, the past days of us releasing big expansions frequently with a lot of new cards added to the game are gone, and we're taking on the new strategy of combining smaller new card releases with the reworks.
Yeah, exactly. And also reworks kind of in between, but most of the time we're focusing on, whenever we're adding new cards, that these cards support a certain archetype, and that archetype is also getting a boost at the same time. So it's a mix of these two. And now that you actually mentioned the number, it's something that I didn't feel as it was that high of a number, because it happened on a monthly cadence. So
it's kind of hidden, right?
It's hidden there, but if you put it together, you kind of look at the number. That's quite extensive.
Yeah, that's a respectable amount, I would say. And of course, these reworks, they were not just happening in the vacuum, or because we like reworking old abilities. Like, as you said, those reworks were done in the conjunction with the new card releases, and also to support the old archetypes, which another goal that we set before ourselves for 2022, to revitalize some of the old forgotten archetypes, or you can also say game strategies that were either unused or maybe even not existed before. And quite a lot of archetypes / strategies were targeted this way. Like, we calculated this number around 30, the ones which before this year were not in a good shape, or received significant changes throughout the year. And we also added a completely new mechanic, which was meant to be opening a new design space to work across multiple factions, multiple decks, to enable also a lot of interesting things. And this mechanic is, of course, Infusion. So definitely, it's a very interesting tool that allows us to experiment even more with very interesting abilities and mix and match things.
Exactly. And those are things that only touch upon balance itself.
The gameplay.
What about other things that kind of happened in the year when it comes to more live ops connected stuff?
Sure. So one of such thing that comes to mind is the problem of excess resources, also known as the reach man problem.
Yes.
Right. So we fully recognize that for players with a lot of resources, it kind of feels sad when you don't have anything to do with them. So knowing this year, we approached this in a few ways. One of them was in the new journeys. There was a sink for excess scraps that you can spend on fast travel. Of course, we understand it's not a full solution to the problem, so stay tuned for more updates on this topic when it comes to scraps and other resources. Another step in a similar direction, which we introduced fairly recently, was one of the recent patches, was a converter of reward points.
Yeah, exactly.
That also allows you to exchange the reward points granted in journeys for pretty much whatever you want. Whatever you're missing, especially maybe for newer players that are relying on journey as a main way to acquire resources. This is a pretty handy thing. Although it must be mentioned that, of course, a reward book still is a better place to spend your reward points, but maybe for those players that are already reaching the point of unlocking almost everything or close to this in the reward book, this is kind of future-proof solution that we are adding to the game with this concept in mind.
Yeah, especially that we know that we have players that have a lot of resources, and I also saw some comments when we launched this feature that people were saying like, okay, it's time to now premify all my favorite decks because now I can just exchange it to Meteorite Powder, which I can later use to get those premiums.
Yeah, it's a nice change in my opinion. Then on the live ops side of things, we touched a bit on the seasonal events. Like, it's not a secret that our seasonal events, which were not touched for some time, like some of them were completely solved by the community. So there was like its own very narrow meta, like only one deck or a combo that completely stifles any kind of a creativity within those. And I think this problem still exists to some extent in some seasonal modes, so it's not fully solved, but well, we're not considering this project finished anyway.
Exactly.
But we were thinking about this, and we removed from the rotation some of the seasonal modes which we believe would be either too difficult to fix, or maybe they were just not popular enough with the community. And we introduced a few new as experiments, also to see what is the reaction, some of the ideas to test them. And keep the feedback coming, because we're always interested in which seasonal modes you prefer, which seasonal modes you hate, what you would propose to tweak or fix to make them more interesting.
Yeah, I always try to mix them up a little bit to have something different. Like you mentioned, also the ones which were not favorited by players, those kind of went the way of the dodo, and we kind of started introducing new things. And also it's a live ops thing, but it's also a gameplay thing, because our gameplay designers had a lot of fun with that one.
Yes. And maybe one honorable mention there is a trial by fire, is a new type of the seasonal mode which allows players to try out the cards that might be not yet collected by them from the newer
ones that they don't
card
own.
drops. Yes. I think it's a cool one, because it gives you a nice test drive before you decide to invest your resources into acquiring these cards and test some strategies. Okay, so maybe switching to the esports side of things, we had a total of 17 official events. So I'm counting here both Opens, World Masters, and also qualifiers, as well as a play-in. So that's quite a big number of events. Very, very busy year in terms of esports. So special shout out to our great community partners from Claymore and EDC Gaming, the ones that helped us throughout this year. Without you, like, none of this would be possible. So thanks for
thank you very much
for helping out with the Gwent Masters. And finally, maybe to close the topic of 2022, there were a couple of events related to the community in which we had a chance to hang out with our favorite people.
Exactly. We had the 20th anniversary event here in the studio in Warsaw, and we also had a similar 20th anniversary event, but it was in Lucca in Italy during Lucca Comics and Games 2022. And yeah, this was actually a good time to, especially post-pandemic, to relax, talk to some people. We had our whole casting team here in Warsaw coming over, as well as other content creators, and we also know them that we know them from The Witcher, we know them from Gwent, we know them from Cyberpunk. Like a lot of them try everything what comes out of CDPR, which we're super thankful for, of course. But yeah, it was really awesome to meet everybody.
It was a great way to celebrate this milestone.
Yeah, totally agreed. Okay, so we talked about the things that happened. What about the things that did not happen, and things that are that we're still thinking about in some sense?
Let's talk about like the things that we wanted to deliver or at least progress in 2022, and where we didn't exactly achieve that. So first topic is, I'm sure, very familiar to many people watching, is premium tokens, right? Like this is probably a bigger meme right now than Dagon, which both are nowhere to be seen in Gwent, and many people are asking for tokens to be premified. So the sad truth is that we were not able to progress much with this topic in 2022. The reason for that is that whenever we have this choice between putting our resources into producing new cards with new abilities, something that can change or improve the meta and add more strategies to the game, and premifying tokens, which would basically require the resources of the same people in the art team. It's always an easy choice for us that cards are taking the priority. This is unfortunate, because we really want to kind of wrap up this project and fulfill the old promise.
Especially that it started. Like we were already into some process, because I remember personally showing some of the work in progress stuff. Tokens already during Twig. The like Dwarf. We also had like the Tree Ant and many others. Which were kind of started, but now the question is what's going to happen next with this process?
So we were thinking about what to do with this, and one solution that we came up with is a bit of a compromise, and I hope that you will find it reasonable. Like we actually have a bunch of tokens, as you said, which we managed to talk on a very advanced stages, so it doesn't take too much time. Always takes some time, but it's still feasible for us to finish those, to ensure that they are up to the quality level that we want to, etc., and release them. So this is something that we can do. The flip side of this is that we won't be able to commit, or we won't be able to promise that we can take care of other tokens which were not touched, and it's a very lengthy process it's a long process from 0 to 100. However, if we're talking about like the quantities here, around 20 of these tokens we can add to the game pretty much as soon as possible.
Okay, that's really good news, because I remember the process started, we got to a certain point, and then we're kind of like, okay, we can do them, but on the other hand, we want to start introducing a little bit more new cards. We want to be
introduced more tokens as things progressed. Yes,
and people were like, okay, so if they're adding more tokens, is this kind of like an infinite loop type of thing? Well, to some extent, yes, because if we had to now catch up and go back to the new ones that we introduced, well, that would take even more time.
It's like a horizon that moves as you moving towards it. So even though it's not great from the consistency standpoint, I still believe that it's a kind of reasonable compromise that we are able to offer for those who can't wait longer.
Yeah, perfect. I just feel sorry for those who won't get the tokens that they dreamt about, but some of them are gonna make it into the game, which is good, because it's better than no premium tokens to get at least a couple tokens, and 20 is more than a couple done.
Okay, so that's the topic number one. Hopefully it clarifies where we are with that. And the second one is a draft.
Kind of a thing that everybody talks about from time to time, like what happens to draft. Like we are aware that it's kind of maybe stuck in the past. This
Yes,
is one of
it
the
is.
ways you could call it. But what are the plans moving forward?
Yeah, so what's the situation with Draft? Basically, yeah, it is stuck in the past in the sense that we are not updating the old packages, which is which will be outdated pretty much with every major rework or balance change or anything that we are doing with the existing cards. Also, the fact that we're keep adding new cards to the game and also would require us go back to this mode and add them manually. And unfortunately, I think we touched on this topic before, but maybe for some people it's a new information. The way it was developed, the way it was configured makes it extremely inefficient for us to invest time into manual updates of a draft mode the way it is.
Yeah.
That's why when we first started to think about, okay, what are the options, how to solve with this, we realized that we cannot move forward with this current version of drafts and just update it and consider that our work is done there. So our design team, they spent time, they did a really good job on working on a prototype of a different iteration of draft. It's not like absolutely different, but a lot of problems of the current draft, of its current iteration, were actually addressed by that. And the most importantly, at least from the production standpoint, is the way of how packages are being done. Not requiring the manual input, very complicated process with special technical knowledge. So you could say it's a future-proof model. So we have this prototype. It's working. Unfortunately, there is once again a very long road between just like an app that you can launch on your PC and check that the new draft logic is working fine, and the actual implementation within the game. So draft is one of these things which we would really like to do, and we will try to find some space and time for like in the upcoming year to squeeze it somewhere. But as of now, we cannot guarantee, unfortunately, that it will make to the cut and that we will be able to address it.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that kind of fell behind. So we decided to do something more instead of just trying to fix it, and work on patch it up and work on the packages. Like you said, the package thing is kind of clunky in a sense that it requires a lot of input from different teams, and they need to be working on it in order to make it function properly. And it's very hard to future-proof it also. So kind of have something which is a solution that already works and that can be used by players for on and on, right?
Yes, so for now we just have it somewhere in the backlog, and it's definitely in our hearts because the new prototype is really cool, and I wish we will find a way to make it happen. But we will be also talking more about the priorities for 2023 and what's actually takes this space and this production capabilities which otherwise could be directed here.
So before we go to 2023, let's talk about the last thing, which is archetypes, and if all the archetypes in Gwent are valid now, or do we still need to flesh out a couple of them and work on them?
Well, that's the easy answer. I think if you will also ask anyone in the community, like how the situation with the archetypes, or game strategists, also the way we call them, clearly this work is not done, right? Like we made, I think, quite an impressive progress throughout the year of bringing back these old archetypes and revitalizing some of those which were not relevant in the current meta or in the present day. Still, we do recognize that there is a room for improvement there. There is still some work to be done, and we were not planning to wrap up this work by this December, right? Like our work here continues, and it's going into the next year where we already know what we're going to address and what will be our priorities in terms of this work. Yeah,
and we want to put a lot of focus on that also in 2023. It's important for us to reach a point where we are happy with the archetypes that are within Gwent. Of course, like you mentioned, it's very hard to achieve perfect balance of all archetypes and all of them working properly. I know there will be always voices saying like, I would want this to be better, or this to be better, or this to have cards this and this and that stronger. Like I would want Pafko Gale to be stronger. Just putting it out there. If any one of the designers is watching, which they probably are. But yeah, it's like one of these things that you know, we always strive to make them better. And I feel like what you mentioned here also with the cards that we introduced and also the reworks that we did this year, we kind of wanted to address these things. And this was also seen by the community. It was people coming to us saying like, oh, I see what they did there. They kind of brought back the things that we wanted. And they also, like this patch specifically targeted something that we wanted to make a comeback, like Knights, for example. And all this stuff was kind of, we're seeing that the community is actually seeing that this was part of our plan for 2022, and we're trying to carry it out.
Yeah, there are basically items on our list which we already know we want and we plan to address in 2023 from this list. And as we'll be moving closer to this, you can expect to hear more in-depth videos in the regular comms bits.
Exactly.
With Pavel, Ryan, with Jean, with myself. So we'll be talking more about it.
Cool. Awesome. So after this recap of 2022, I think we're ready to move on to 2023. And I think we should be starting out with the number of cards that will be dropping in the upcoming year.
Sure. Yeah. As always, let's start with the big topic. So drops in 2023. So we are planning 3 separate drops. In terms of the total number of cards, we're aiming for like 72, 70 plus. This drops just also to set the expectations. They won't be equal in terms of size, so we're planning to have a different sizes between them. And that's the our plans when it comes to adding new cards in 2023.
Okay, so to visualize it, it is pretty much going to look something like this.
Exactly.
So first card release in April, then another one in July, and then the third one in September.
Right, and maybe, you know, for those who are wondering why there is this like 3 month gap after the last drop. So we actually setting aside this period to fully stabilize the meta, to fully stabilize the balance after this final drop release. So we are, you know, not rushing in terms of the printing press of new cards, but in ensuring that the impact of all new card releases on Gwent and meta varieties is positive. So setting some time aside to polish everything.
Yeah, so that's it when it comes to the drops itself. What about things like addressing the meta, and what about monthly updates? Is everything here kind of to stay?
Yes, of course. Like we will continue with the monthly patches, which will include both reworks and the balance changes. And I think it's a high time to talk about the meta variety topic. It's somewhat hot topic sometimes in the discussions regarding like how successful or not we are with this. So yeah, maybe a few clarification also required of how we are looking at this process, like how do we measure success, or what we are targeting exactly. So first of all, I want to talk about the difference between the decks which are viable or competitive, right? Those are sometimes when people are talking about decks, they completely ignoring the viability subject and only focusing on the competitive side. So let's give some definition. So what is a viable strategy? What makes deck viable? To me, this is being able to execute the game plan with the right tools, with the right piloting at all levels of play. So we're not exclusively looking at the pro rank, we're not exclusively looking at top 100 or top 10 of the competition, and this is kind of our only or
general sense of a deck.
Yes, it's like if you are as a player is able to climb up the ladder, doesn't matter where exactly in the ladder you are with the deck, and occasionally compete against the top decks with what you have, and it's even in the matchups which may be not favored for you, then you're probably piloting a viable deck. So just something which exists in the game and has this distinctive game plan, win condition, etc. So, for example, both vampires and wild hunts units are viable choices to play monsters. Same goes for symbiosis and dwarves in Scoia'tael. At the same time, none of these decks has to be competitive to be viable, right?
Yeah.
It just like we see also the stats, we see what kind of decks, what kind of cards players are using, and if those are popular in terms of play rate, if also those are decent in terms of the win rate, that tells us a lot about like how successful we are with targeting these game strategies or these archetypes. And of course, like you also might ask, like what's not viable then? Like what's if
Things
maybe,
that don't work.
yeah, maybe everything is viable. So for example, in Northern Realms, Knights were not really viable. It was not really an archetype, despite us having Knights as a type of unit within Northern Realms. You couldn't really say that the Knight deck was a thing until we reworked many of those, and we actually added new cards and the new mechanics that made sense.
So they needed a little bit more work on them in order for it to become something that is viable. And I like that you mentioned that a viable strategy doesn't mean that it's a tier, S or tier 0 deck that pretty much destroys the meta. It is overpowered and super powered, but it's just one of those strategies that you can play and is viable. And if you pilot it very well, the deck actually can perform better at both lower ranks as well as higher ranks, right?
Right. The deck has a chance even against like maybe something that is being considered a higher tier.
Yeah.
And maybe another example of the deck or archetype which is not, we do not believe it's currently fully viable is Nilfgaard Spies, right? So that's something that we'll be looking into at some point in the future. So also maybe a few words on the competitive decks, right? And this whole pro play level. So we are very well aware that playing meta decks always will be the mainstream, right? This is the way of like the lesser resistance. To me, the biggest difference between deck which is simply viable and the top S tier competitive deck, you name it, is its reliability. Just something that you, over iterations, if you're a deck builder or if you're active player, you're just experimenting, you're seeing, okay, this card maybe doesn't work really well with this deck, it can be replaced by something else, and over these iterations you're finally reaching some state in which, okay, this is really optimized. So it's maybe not
like fully synergistic, working 100%, even if you don't get the perfect draws, the deck still will get to a point where it can actually, get the engines rolling or get the game plan going and kind of pretty much carry out the overall strategy that it has.
Yeah, like we do recognize that there is a natural movement like through towards the mid-range solution or towards kind of like Swiss Army knife kind of decks that can do everything, and it's not our intention to even out the power level by giving all archetypes, all decks absolutely the same tools. So like there's a equal like removal access to the removal, right, in all factions or in all decks, etc. Like for us in this game, it exists in the form of a neutral cards which can go with any faction and they can be used as this tech tools or like special solutions, maybe less tailored for the particular playstyle. So like just I don't think like this needs to convince anyone or to change your mind if you are thinking differently. I just want to give you a bit of a sneak peek into how we are thinking about viable strategies versus competitive strategies. And maybe one final thought on this is that we don't have this illusion or kind of utopic vision that in the top meta there will be a time where all decks or a huge number of those are equally competitive and there's like this perfect state. It's a very noble goal to have, and we should move towards it and decrease the gap between the top decks and their closest competitors, but it's probably not very realistic to expect that there will be like all decks existing in the game, they all even out and they have
will be all tier ones.
yes,
pretty
all
much.
tier ones. Yeah, it doesn't work like that in the real life.
I don't think it's possible in any game that you will always have something which is on the same 100% level. There's always decks or archetypes or I don't know, something that performs better than the rest, and there is always going to be this thing that, you know, balance is needed, and we kind of see that balance is needed on a monthly basis.
Yes.
That's why we address it on a monthly basis, and we try to keep, you know, moving things up and down based on what's being played, what's getting the best results, and kind of moving forward with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's 2023. When it comes to the number of cards, as well as the updates that we plan and the reworks or the pretty much the things that we'll be working on with the Balance team. And before we move on to esports, I think it's a good time to also talk about 2024 since we're talking about the gameplay aspects of,
Exactly.
of the
I
game.
think there are a few things which we didn't mention about 2023, but it's better to talk about them in the connection to the 2024 plans.
Exactly.
Yeah. So like it's not very common when we're talking about, you know, such a distant future and in Gwent's terms, like some planning something.
It's normally 1 year ahead.
Yeah,
right?
it's 1 year ahead, so like this is definitely unusual. I recognize this. So we wanted to give you update about our 2024 plans by saying that we are not planning to release new cards starting from 2024. So the cards which we will release in 2023 basically will be the last brand new ones that we will be adding to the game, and it's a pretty significant change, right? Like there is no way around it. But maybe, you know, let's talk about the context around it, and let's talk about the grand scheme of things which surrounds this these plans and this decision.
Yeah.
So first of all, with the cards that we are planning to add to the game next year in 2023, we are basically planning to close the card pool with every idea that we wanted to add, every mechanic that we want to see, pretty much everything that we would like to see in Gwent. We will try to fit it within the year, and it also would include like our continued work with balance changes, reworks, and all other changes.
Okay, so we're completing the card pool. I really like this term of completing a card pool. So actually bring it into a place where we're happy with it. Cards seem like they're in a good place. We worked on some of the cards which kind of we felt that maybe felt short, and we also have new cards coming in 2023, so they are kind of making this whole picture now complete.
Yeah, and also, you know, there always was this ongoing conversation about standard rotation in Gwent. Like, we believe that like we don't need to come back to this topic if we know that there won't be new cards beyond a certain point, and we believe that this existing card pool can be improved in terms of like viability of the meta. So we already touched on these topics. Then there is no need to introduce rotation anymore.
Exactly.
With this fixed number of cards available within Gwent, we will do our best to make sure that it's all like in a good state meta-wise. But of course, it's a very important question. So like when we will stop adding new cards by the end of 2023. So does it mean there are no more changes to the game to be expected from that point? Like, is it just completely, you know, in the freezer?
No.
Yes. Oh, you know the answer already, right? You probably looked at the script.
Yeah.
So yes, the answer is no, and we have a very, I think, unconventional solution here. But at the same time, I'm a big believer that this is the right way to move forward. We want to give you, Gwent community, the right tools and the opportunities to drive the balance changes of the game going forward.
Exactly.
We're working on the solution which will allow players to do it directly in the Gwent client, so it's not some complicated external system.
You don't need to work in Unity in order to make it
to be a developer or to have a special access. Of course, like on the flip side, maybe this system won't be as robust as the tools that our team currently have in terms of like full scale reworks, adding completely new cards, inventing new abilities and things like that.
Yeah.
But when it comes strictly to the balancing tools, like the main balancing tools, right? Like that's something that we believe is feasible and will ensure that players can interact with the game, not just by playing it, but also deciding which direction it should go balance-wise, what are the problematic cards that needs to be nerfed, which are the cards that needs to receive buffs and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be interesting for players to actually have more of an engagement and also having the possibility to reflect how the meta will shape, especially for those who are very like in the core of our community, because I feel like balance is also one of these things that always gives you these polarized opinions when it comes to what cards should be, how they should work. So I'm interested to see how this will actually affect the decision making from the community standpoint, if they'll be able to, because if you look at it from a developer standpoint, we're kind of looking into things from standing from and looking from kind of up above. But when it comes to players who are playing the game, I feel like there is also this personal engagement within the game, which kind of causes you to favor and disfavor certain archetypes. Like we all always say, like, oh, my favorite archetype is this, but I don't like Mill, I don't like Kelly, I don't like Clog, I don't like this, I don't like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how this will engage the community. But I feel like it's something that doesn't happen very often, that you're kind of giving some part of the steering wheel to the community instead of like keeping full, engagement and focus only for yourself.
Well, I mean, there is a partial inspiration, behind this feature, that we see that the games which are really like sticking around for years or even decades are those that are in many ways are driven by the community.
Exactly.
Would it be modders? Would it be people that are making any kind of fan submissions, making their own maps for strategies for like games which are like really, really old. So that's I believe one of the features that have a great potential and have a great positive impact on the longevity of the project.
Exactly.
But that's not all, because game balance changes are really important. It's important to keep the meta fresh, but there's also this another layer of like what to do with in the game besides just playing it, besides just grinding the ladder, whatever. And recognizing this problem, we also working on the additional extra progression system on top of everything which already exists in the game right now, which needs to not only to solve the problem like giving more rewards to players and give more reasons to come back to the game, but also it's our way of introducing some kind of soft motivation to experiment with deck building choices. What I mean by that is, even before we came up to this feature, we were discussing like some softer form of the rotation, which like for certain seasons, for a limited period of time, we are putting restrictions on which cards or sets or expansions cannot or can be used and played. But after long discussions with the team, we decided that it's not the best solution, especially taking new players in mind, that if you just crafted the card or deck and the next day, the season changing and you're locked out of your possession, it just doesn't feel great. So instead, we were thinking about the way of letting players always to have access to your full collection. Everything that you ever acquired in Gwent in terms of the cards are always with you. But you have additional extra motivation in form of quests, rewards, achievements, which are part of this new progression system for you to engage into some creative deck building, using restrictions, not utilizing the full collections, but narrowing it down. I think it can be very interesting for those who kind of looking for additional challenge and also to spice things up while getting some cool rewards in the process. Perfect.
So like you mentioned, we kind of as players, one thing is to have balance which is changing within the game, what kind of keeps us engaged and keeps us coming to try out the new things, and like you said, like progressing on the ladder is also one thing, but it's really cool to have something additional when it comes to progression that kind of gives us another point of engagement in terms of coming back to the game and replaying and also doing different things.
Exactly so. So those are the features, like the main features that will occupy a lot of our development time.
Yeah.
Next year, we believe that it's super important given our plans for 2024, and the goal of working on those would be basically to ensure the future of the game.
Yeah, and of course, when it comes to further developments and stuff like that, we'll keep you updated as always. So in 2023, based on how everything is progressing, we'll be keeping in touch in games of like what's gonna change, like what's gonna happen, and what we want to do moving forward. And probably we'll also be doing some type of updates by the end of 2023, like we always do, in order to give an outlook into 2024. So I feel like it's if we have those things out of the way, we should be probably now moving on to the esports aspects. So talking about opens, World Masters, and stuff like that.
Right. So we just wrapped up the season 4. So yeah, for those of you who was wondering if there's going to be a season 5, yes, there's going to be a season 5. We're looking into the last competitive season of Grandmasters. So Grandmasters as a CDPR organized official tournament competitive system for the game is coming to an end. But of course, like we don't want to end it abruptly. We want to have like a proper season 5 with the reworked structure. Once again, we always keep making changes to our competitive schedule, and we also making sure that we're incorporating feedback whenever we're doing this from the pro players. So what we're looking for is 2 events per year, and both of these events will be I'm not counting qualifiers here, right? So I'm talking about major
events that we organize, which are done in this studio that we have here in Warsaw, and that we have both casters and players present online.
We're looking at the new competitive schedule, in which there are basically 2 splits. The first half of the year, which is culminating with the mid-season tournament, which happens at the middle of the year, and then the World Masters. And I think we have the graphics, right, that we can show to illustrate how it's going to look like.
So yeah, this is where we plan them more or less. Of course, specific days are to be decided yet and kind of announced, but I think we'll know that closer when we are actually into 2023 and already working on the releases and the drops and the patches, because that lets us kind of define when is a good time in order to have a competitive esports event, so the meta as well as the balance is not changing on the go.
Exactly. So yeah, it says here that both events are just marked by the name of the league, Grandmasters. But as I said before, the first one will be mid-season tournament. The second one will be World Masters, as always, to wrap up, to crown the champion of the whole season, and everything which is in between, including the qualification path and how it's all connected with the crown point system, and then all other important questions. It's just something that we want to announce after discussing it with the pro players community that were giving us a lot of feedback already about the existing system. So we want to make sure that whatever feedback will be given about the new proposal is properly incorporated, and we will have like a enjoyable final season of Grandmasters.
Exactly. Perfect. So that's when it comes to organized play.
Right.
Also, like you mentioned, more information will come closer, probably to the start of the season, which starts, if I remember correctly, in January.
Yes, we want already to start in January for ladder play to matter, as we did last year. So more details about it sometime in December already, I expect. Maybe one thing also to mention, because the final season of Masters sounds like, okay, there are no more esports beyond that point, or no more esports outside of the official circuit. Well, it doesn't have to be this way, right?
Yeah.
Like it is always, we have even now some very cool, some really good examples of the community tournaments, some charity tournaments, which are
even better.
Yeah, my favorite ones. So we hope that community will take over, and
keep on driving
we will
this.
see more grassroots. We will see more events in a different formats, in different sizes, and all kinds of formats to be organized by the community.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so we have this aspect out of the way. We have everything connected to game balance, live ops more or less. Like you said, this is of course a high-level plan. Details will follow. What about changes to the CDPR team responsible for Gwent and working on Gwent?
Just to also to set the correct expectations here. So when it comes to the team, we are not making any changes as of now. We are continue to work on Gwent in a very similar capacity to what we had in 2022. So in this regard, you can expect everything that we mentioned before, including monthly patches, including reworks and the new card updates and all this. What it also means is that because our scope is not increasing either, or our capabilities are not increasing, like we don't have a place for new journeys or updates for Rogue Mage in this strategy. We really would be focused on making sure that the game is really prepared for this. A spoiler, we call it a Project Gwentfinity, right? I was planning to talk about it a bit
Which
later.
is something that we created internally when it comes to Gwentfinity and the team responsible for the project moving forward and bringing it to a state that feels like it's infinite in the sense that it's driving itself and is having a core team that focuses on it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So I like also Gwentfinity because it shows like what's our intention and what's our ambition is, and it's important to include the community into this. That was always our intention and our dream that we can make it happen. So Gwent fans, people that care the most about the game, they will have the opportunity, they will have the tools to make the game better and actively participate. I know that we do have such people in the Gwent community, and the Gwentfinity is for them.
Exactly.
And of course, as always, throughout 2023 especially, we always would love to hear your thoughts regarding what you think is important. You might disagree with us on some of the priorities, or you might point out some things that you feel like absolute must to take a look at or to focus on. And as always, we'll continue to listen, we'll continue to deliver to make sure that we are handing over Gwent to you in the best possible shape.
Exactly. And it's also, I think, a time to stop and reflect on kind of the journey that we had when it comes to Gwent and throughout the years, and the ups and downs and the memories and all that stuff. I know this kind of sounds like a farewell. Well, it's not. It's not supposed to sound that way. It's kind of more of a sense of we want to do the game justice and do for it as many things as possible, and then hand it over in some sense to the community. But we will be still supporting the game in the sense of keeping servers up, keeping communications up, keeping tech support working. All these things will be happening for the project itself.
Yes, definitely. We came a long way together, and Gwent, like in 2022, it turned 6 years, starting from the closed beta. So it was a long time, and as you said, like ups and downs, we will remember this history where friendships forged, in some cases even marriages, and like we came a long way together. That's sure, and we are very grateful to the community for going with us so far. I sincerely hope that we're not stopping, and it's not a farewell, as you say now, and we will see each other on the battlefield, and that you will keep engaging with the game with us. And once again, 2023, just to maybe recap it, we have a very busy year ahead of us. We wouldn't do the Project Infinity if we didn't believe that there are players that care, that will keep caring about Gwent as we do. And that's also the reason why we're doing this communication with you now. We believe in in a transparent approach here, to be honest with players, to set the correct expectations about the future. And that's where we are, and that's where I hope we will continue to see each other on these regular updates.
Exactly. And I like that you mentioned that the core thing for us always when it comes to Gwent and its development, as also when it comes to the monthly updates and the bigger updates and kind of the twigs that we had also when we kind of sat down together and talked about balance and stuff like that, is always been about open, honest communication, and we want to keep that going throughout 2023 and then beyond, so all of you kind of know what to expect and what our plans are.
So yes, please stay positive, stay constructive, and let us know what you think is missing or what needs to be addressed, and let's work together throughout 2023 to bring Gwentfinity to life.
Exactly. Well said. Vlad, thank you as always for sitting down with me and talking, and yeah, we'll see you all probably later. Take care.